be pro-life in this country if you support America's mass murderers' right to legally buy an AR-15, the weapon that so terrified 400 Texas police officers in Uvalde that they were afraid of confronting the mass murderer in Robb Elementary School for 77 minutes. Officer Rex Engelbert and Officer Michael Collazo were both afraid of confronting that mass murderer who had two AR-15s, but they did it anyway. Heroism is not being fearless. Heroism is taking action despite your fear. In Texas, 400 police officers were afraid of doing what the first two Nashville police officers at the scene of yesterday's mass murder did right away. And still, in that demonstration of the very greatest level of bravery we could ever hope police officers to choose, still 3 9-year-old children are dead. Evelyn Dykehouse, Allie Scruggs, and William Kenny. And 3 adults were murdered: the head of the school, Catherine Kuntz, a substitute teacher, Cynthia Peak, and school custodian, Mike Hill. The most dismissible word you will ever hear in the coverage of these events is motive. It is reflexive for the news media, and it is reflexive for the police to use that word, because motive is something that has been discussed in traditional crime analysis for as long as there have been police forces and reporters covering police forces. But madness does not have a motive. Madness is relentlessly dangerous in and of itself. The mass murderer's parents rightly did not want their child to have guns. They had no idea that their child had legally purchased, with no problem, 7 guns, including 2 AR-15s. No one has ever proposed any legislation that would have prevented a person like that from buying an AR-15, except an actual ban on the sale of AR-15s, which Joe Biden accomplished as a senator in a ban that lasted 10 years. Only a very small percentage of mentally unstable people who would meet the qualifications for an insanity defense in court are ever diagnosed before they engage in criminal conduct.
The goal is to get guns out of the hands of people that are mentally unstable or criminals.
He knows that's an impossible goal. Some legal gun purchasers only become criminals the first time they use their legally purchased gun in a crime. So you never could have prevented that criminal from having that gun. And some mentally unstable people only prove just how mentally unstable they are the first time they use their gun, their AR-15, in a school shooting. And so there is no form of background check that can prevent the legal sale of AR-15s to people who will go into our schools and murder children and teachers. And Lindsey Graham knows that. He's just lying his way through the latest murder of children with the same lies Republicans always use after these murders. It wasn't always this way. There was a time when Republicans were no more in favor of gun rights than Democrats were. But then Republican campaign pollsters found the sliver of the electorate that cares obsessively about guns and added them to the sliver of the electorate that cares obsessively about stopping all abortions, and added them to the electorate that hates taxes and liberals, and that became their only formula for winning elections. Conservative Republican President Richard Nixon chose the conservative Warren Burger to be Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, knowing that Warren Burger would steer the court in a more conservative direction, which he did. But the one thing that Warren Burger could not abide was the fetishism about the Second Amendment that he saw beginning to develop when he was Chief Justice. Here is Chief Justice Berger in 1991, 5 years after he retired from the Supreme Court.
If I were writing the Bill of Rights now, there wouldn't be any such thing as the Second Amendment.
Which says?
That a well-regulated militia being necessary for the defense of the state, the people's rights to bear arms. This has been the subject of one of the greatest pieces of fraud, I repeat the word fraud, on the American public by special interest groups that I have ever seen in my lifetime. Now just look at those words. There are only 3 lines to that amendment. A well-regulated militia. If the militia, which was going to be the state army, was going to be well-regulated, why shouldn't 16 and 17 and 18 or any other age persons be regulated in the use of arms, the way an automobile is regulated?
The Republican fraud perpetrated by Presidents George W. Bush and Donald Trump and Republican members of the House of Representatives and Republican senators will continue to get children and teachers murdered in their classrooms by legally purchased AR-15s because it is the Republican Party policy to make sure that America's mass murderers are the very best equipped mass murderers in the world. No school in the world has seen a better equipped mass murderer enter that school than the mass murderer who entered that school in Nashville yesterday carrying the weapons that Republicans like Lindsey Graham fetishize. Even the Senate chaplain said today, it is time for us to move beyond thoughts and prayers. The Senate chaplain is telling Republican senators that their prayers aren't good enough, but none of them will be moved to try to protect the lives of 9-year-olds or any other student in America, because, to again use the words of the Senate chaplain today, Republican politicians have already lost the battle to the demonic forces that seek to engulf us.